Hey everybody, Susan here with Pumpkin Hill Stampers. I have a Stampin' Show and Tell for you today. I'm going to be creating a card that's following a sketch put out by Mojo Monday. This is from Julie Tillman. Her sketches are beautiful, and I will put a link to her blog in my post so you can follow along to see all the projects that she's got posted over there. So I am using her sketch layout, but I'm not necessarily using her sketch measurements. So she does provide a sketch every couple of weeks, and she provides the layout along with hints of their different measurements. So I know some of that is very important to some of you. You find that a lot easier to create cards that way. So I'm just going to set that there because I'm kind of following her layout with my card today, but not exactly. So I'm going to be creating with the Flowering Blooms stamp set. I've already stamped in my Memento my large blossom here. Okay, so I've done it twice. I cut one out with my layering circle dies, and then I used the coordinating die from the stamp set to cut out the flower itself. Okay, and then I just trimmed off the part that I didn't want. So I'm going to end up doing a flower on a flower when we get down to that part. I'm using a piece of the Artistry Blooms Designer Series paper as my background piece, and I'm going to have So Saffron, Granny Apple Green, and Garden Green as my coordinating colors on my card. So you can see I've got a piece of that ready to put on. Then I have also brought in two dies from a new set of dies that I have. This is the Flowering Vine dies. So this is kind of cool. This is in the spring catalog, and it's got a lot of different shapes. As you can see, we've got the rectangle, which I used, an oval, a circle, and then it's got some coordinating flower dies that would go with the coordinating stamp set, and then it's got this fun label die, which I've cut and used for my label as well. So that's where that came from. So that's the Flowering Vine dies. Now remember, all my supplies will be on my post, so you don't have to worry about writing it all down or figuring out what I used. I'll have all that out there for you. Okay, so layering circle dies, and I've used a scallop for the Granny Apple Green. That's going to back that. Then I've used that new rectangular die here, so I've got that to go. Now you're going to see I have this So Saffron circle. So how did I do that? So what I did was I took my 2-inch circle punch, and I just punched from a piece of scrap paper my circle. Now you'll see when I do my final card put together that it's not going to matter that I'm missing that little piece because it's going to get layered. If it really bothers you, just go ahead and cut a full circle, but I had a piece of scrap that wasn't quite big enough, but it worked. So when I put that on my cutting tool, I just put that down on my plate, then I put my die over the top, I ran it through, and you end up with this piece, but now it's a circle piece instead of a rectangular piece. So it doesn't have as nice of an edge, but you still get that lacy kind of feel to it. So that's going to be an embellishment on our card. Okay? Now, let's see. One other piece I want to take you through is this trim piece. I'm just going to remove things from the table as I go because that makes it easier to follow along. So, this trim piece here. Okay? When I cut it out of a piece of Garden Green, but you're going to see it didn't free it on the ends, right? And I thought, well, that's really weird. Why did they make the die like that? But then I think I figured it out. So if you cut your die, all right, and it's not freed from your cardstock, then you can take your paper snips, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here. Now you're going to notice I'm going to leave a little tab on the end. So what I discovered after I cut it out, after I played with it a little bit, was there is a built-in tab on the end of this die. So if you were to cut it from a 4.5 piece of paper, you would end up with a 1/8 inch tab on the end. And an 1/8 inch on each end would allow you to wrap it around a standard size card of 4.25 width and not have to worry about trying to get adhesive on that piece from behind. Now I do have these little ends here that are poking up, so I'm just going to trim those off because I do want those to be open, but I'm just flipping them up and just trimming them off. So there's a little bit of work to do there, but see the difference? Here's the first one I cut, and I trimmed it right at those edges, and then here's the second one. I realized what they're for. I've left those little tabs on. So we're going to use this one, and I'm going to show you how I think you're supposed to use it. Okay, so I think we have all our pieces now. We can start building our card. So we're going to start by putting the Designer Series paper onto our card base. So I just have a Whisper white card base. I'm using my liquid Tombow adhesive, and I'm just going to put a thin layer on my piece. I don't want it to squirt out the sides, and I don't want it to be super thick. So just adding a little bit of adhesive, and then the nice thing about using the Tombow that way is that when I put this down on my card, I can kind of slide it a little bit so I can make sure I'm getting it square on my edges. And then I just do a nice press like that. Oh, and I just realized I goofed. Why did I goof? Because I have these tabs, right? I was just going to say I'm going to put the tabs so I would wrap them around. So if I had remembered first, I would have wrapped the tab around on the side and adhered that on the back. So, see, I've already goofed, but we're just going to keep on moving because I don't want to try to peel that up now. But that's how that would have worked. I could have put it around the Designer Series paper and tabbed it and then put it on the front of my card. I didn't do that, so I'm going to have to go back to the way I normally would have done it, which is more difficult, but that's okay. It'll still work. Still work just fine. Okay, so here's the sketch, right? I said I was kind of following it, but not exactly. What I've decided to do is I'm flipping it upside down. Okay, I'm going to put my circle up in this area, and you can see I've already colored one layer with my blends. So I don't want to get this too thick, so I'm just going to put some Tombow on here and layer that on my Granny Apple Green. Okay, and that's going to be sitting right about there, but it's going to be the last layer I put on. Now I have another flower, I'll get to that in a minute. So I have my rectangle here, so this is going to scoot in like this, and then we've got this piece across, so I'm going to use my edge here. Okay, this is going to come back up to the top. So I'm just playing with my pieces, and then here's my little circle. I'm going to put this in down here. So see how that all kind of overlaps? But I want to lengthen this one. So I'm just going to come in, and I'm going to just cut it right across like that. So now I have two pieces, right? But I'm going to lengthen it, and then when I put this over the top, you're not going to know that I cut it. So let's start by putting those on. Okay, so I'm going to add, now you could use your fine tip glue. I'm just going to go ahead and use my Tombow because it's handy here. Just going to try not to add too much adhesive in too many places so that it doesn't squirt out. I just want to get it tacked down. So just a little bit. We're going to have other layers on top, so it's going to get tacked with other adhesives as well. So I'm just putting that one down. And then this is the piece I cut off the bottom, so I'm just going to leave a gap and get this one on there. So I'm just building up my layers, okay? So I'm just going to line this up down here. So there's my gap in between, but when we're done, we're not going to notice it. All right, so there's that. So the next thing I want to do is put on my So Saffron piece. So this piece I want it to be up from here, right? But I'm going to tuck it under. So again, I'm just going to add a little bit of my liquid adhesive. I'm going to put this over here. Okay, so that's just up and offset a little bit from the first layer I put down. And then I've got this one, which if I had put all this on before I put my Designer Series paper on my card, I could have wrapped intact, but I didn't. I forgot. Even though I was talking about it, I forgot. So, even though I've been stamping, coming on 16 years as a demonstrator, I too still make mistakes in my projects, but you just make the best of it and you move on. So, just a little bit of adhesive there, and so this is going to go right across my card. Okay, so I'm just going to press all that down just with my fingertips just to get all the adhesive to kind of start to adhere to the layers behind it. Okay, so there's my basic layout. Now remember, my flower is going to come in here, right? And I've got my words. So my words are going to go across there. So you're not going to notice that I've split that granny apple green piece apart when I get the sentiment on there. Okay, so we can go ahead and add this one now. I'm going to put that one on with dimensionals. So we'll add a few dimensionals here. Let's see. I guess I want it coming kind of straight up. So I'm just going, again, I'm just overlapping all my pieces just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to add my sentiment layer. So again, I'm just going to put that on dimensionals. Okay, and this piece I'm going to put across right where this seam is so that we don't notice. Yeah, right there, I think. Okay, so this dark green layer gets a little bit lost in the mix, but it is there and it does show when you're really paying attention to the detail. So I could leave it just like that, couldn't I? I've got all my pieces on there, it's good to go. But if I want to pop the flower up again, so I've stamped it a second time and I've die cut it with the coordinating die. This is how I've colored it in my blend. So I take my light, I'm using So Saffron. Is this my light one? That is my light one. So I take my light So Saffron and I'm just coming in and coloring the whole flower, right? With a layer of So Saffron. Something else I could have done is I could have stamped it on So Saffron cardstock and then trimmed it out, and then I could have just added a layer of ink over the top, but I went with white. Now I'm going to take my darker one and I'm just going to follow the way the flower is already shaded, and I'm just going to touch the darker ink just to those grayed in areas, right? It seems to follow that if those are the darker images on the flower, that's where I'd want my darker ink. So just add layers of ink until I've got it the depth of color that I really want. And then that one I'm going to go ahead and add with dimensionals, and I'm going to pop it right over the top of the previously stamped image. Just line it up just like that, and there we go. So I hope you enjoyed my show and tell today. Again, just follow the blog link over and all the details will be shared, supply list and the measurements and the step-by-step tutorial. So leave me some comments over on the blog or here on YouTube. I appreciate that. And I hope you have a great day and do some fun stamping. See you again soon. Bye-bye.